Hi, welcome back to ingvid.com. I'm Adam. Today's lesson is a writing lesson, but it's also a spoken English lesson. It's about anything to do with English because we're going to be looking at sentence types. Now, of course, when you speak, you're using all kinds of sentence types, but especially in writing, it's important to know the different types of sentences because, especially if you're going to be writing tests, they want to see sentence variety. And even if you're not writing tests, anything you write, if you're using only one type of sentence, your writing becomes very bland, very boring, very hard to follow because it's a little bit monotone. So what you need to do is you need to vary, you need a variety of sentence structures in your writing to give it a little bit more life, okay? Luckily, you only need to know 4 sentence types. We have simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex. Now, this is not exactly easy, but it's not exactly hard either. If you figure out what you need to have in each one, in each sentence type, just make sure it's there, okay? Let's start. A simple sentence has one independent clause. A little bit of review. What is an independent clause? An independent clause has a subject and a verb and can complete an idea. It can stand by itself because the idea in that clause is complete. I don't need to add anything else to it. Okay. A compound sentence has 2 or more independent clauses joined by a conjunction. A compound conjunction, and, but, or, so, for, not very common, etc. So we join 2 independent clauses with a compound conjunction. You can have more, but again, you have to be a little bit careful. Once you get to 3, start to look for a way to finish your sentence, because if you get to the 4th, you already have a crazy sentence that runs the risk of being a run-on sentence. Eventually, you're going to make a mistake, you're going to miss something, and the whole sentence falls apart. I don't recommend 3, but you can put 3. Then we have a complex sentence. A complex sentence has 1 independent clause plus 1 or more dependent clause. A dependent clause is a clause that has a subject and a verb, but cannot stand by itself. It is not a complete idea. It has some sort of relationship to the independent clause. We have 3 types of dependent clauses. We have noun clauses, we have adjective clauses, and we have adverb clauses. Okay, that's a whole separate lesson. You can look at that later, but you have to have one of these plus one of these, and you have a complex sentence. Next, we have a compound complex sentence. Here you have 2 or more independent clauses, again, joined by a conjunction, and 1 or more dependent clause. Okay? So you have basically all the elements in this sentence. Then, once you have all this stuff, you can add as many complements, or basically extras, as you want. So, let's look at an example. We're going to start with the simple sentence. Layla studied biology. Very simple. I have a subject, I have a verb, I have an object. Okay? This is a simple sentence. It's an independent clause. It can stand by itself. It's a complete idea. Now, I can add anything I want to this that is not another clause of any type, and it'll still be a simple sentence. So I can say, my friend Layla studied biology in university. I'll say uni for short. I have more information, but do I have a different type of sentence? No, it's still a simple sentence. Now, let's look at this sentence. First, let me read it to you. Even with the weather being that nasty, the couple and their families decided to go ahead with the wedding as planned. Now you're thinking, wow, that's got to be a complex sentence, right? It's so long. There's so much information in it. But if we look at it carefully, it is still a simple sentence. Why? Because we only have 1 independent clause. Where is it? Well, find the subject and verb combination first. So, what is the subject in this sentence? Give you a few seconds, figure it out. Hit the pause key, look at it. Okay, we're back. Here's the subject. The couple and their families. Now, don't get confused with this and. This is not joining another clause to another clause. This is just joining one part of the subject to another part of the subject. So here we have a compound subject, not a compound sentence. So one subject, decided. Subject, verb. Do I have any other subjects and verbs? Do I have any other verbs? I have this verb, but this is an infinitive verb, right? A clause only has one tense verb. You can have 10 verbs in a sentence, but only one will be the tense verb in the independent clause. And what goes with this? Nothing. Okay, oh, here's another verb, but it's not really a verb. It's a participle, okay? So now, here's my subject, here's my verb, here's my object. This whole thing is the object to decide. Decided what? To go ahead with the wedding as planned. Even with the weather being that nasty. So all of this is what? This is a phrase. It does not contain a subject. It does not contain a verb, right? So here I have a simple sentence with lots of additions to it, okay? Very simple. The key is to recognize what's involved in the sentence. You can have a very long sentence. As long as it only has one subject-verb combination, it is a simple sentence, okay? Let's look at a few of the other ones now and see how they work. Okay, so we're back. Let's look at the next set of examples. Let's look at compound sentences. Compound sentences, I only gave you one example here because it's very straightforward. Have your independent clause, have your compound conjunction, have another independent clause. I arrived at the office at 9. I could put a period here, and that's a complete sentence. My assistant came 10 minutes later. This is a complete sentence. Two independent clauses. All I'm doing is joining them with the conjunction and. But remember, I said you can have one, you can have two, you can have three independent clauses. I can add another one. But she was sick, so I told her to go home. Now, I arrived at the office at 9 and my assistant came 10 minutes later, but she was sick, so I told her to go home. How many independent clauses do you count here? 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, is this a good sentence? No, it's not. Is it grammatically correct? Yes, it is. So this is okay, but I wouldn't recommend it. I would split this into two sentences. I would put a period here. I would take out the but. I would say she was sick, so I told her to go home. I'll just make it a whole two separate ideas instead of one joined idea. But again, that's up to you. I don't recommend it, but it's grammatically okay. So is also a conjunction. It is not an adverb conjunction. It is a compound conjunction. Next, let's look at complex sentences. And this is where people start getting a little bit scared. But you don't need to be. Just remember, independent clause, dependent clause. John retired. John is a subject, retired is the verb. I have a complete idea. That's all I need to know. He doesn't work anymore. But I want to give you more information. John retired when he turned 65. So this is an adverb clause. Okay, this whole thing is an adverb clause. It has its own subject and verb. And it tells you something about the verb retired. When did he retire? When he turned 65. Turned means had his birthday. Okay? Now this is a complex sentence. It's much longer than this one, but it works in the same way. Let me read it to you. Whether you agree with me or not makes little difference to our investors, who, by the way, are the ones most affected by whatever mistakes we make. Now you're thinking, wow, that's a crazy sentence. Where do I start? Start with the independent clause, always. A little bit trickier here though, okay? The easiest way to find your independent clause is first find your tense verbs. Any verb that has a past, present, or future tense in any form, find that first. Agree. Okay, there's a subject here. You agree. This is one combination of subject-verb. or not blah, 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 makes. Well, that S tells you that this is a tense verb, simple present. Okay, we'll figure out where the subject for it is. All right. Little difference to our investors. Makes what? Who, by the way, are. So here's another tense verb. And here's your subject for it, okay? The ones most affected by whatever mistakes we make. And here's your last one. So now you're thinking, okay, well, I have subject verb, I have subject verb, I have subject verb. Well, where's the verb, where's the subject for this verb? And here it is. Okay, this is a noun clause. Noun clauses act as subjects or objects. Okay, so this is your whole subject, this is your verb. Little difference to our investors. Now here we have an adjective clause describing, telling me something about investors, telling me a little bit extra information about investors. Who are the ones most affected by what? And here we have another noun clause. By what? But whatever mistakes we make. Whatever is the object conjunction. For mistakes, we make these mistakes. So now, a little bit simpler, I hope, but you still see, I have my independent clause with a noun clause in it, which already makes it a complex sentence, but then I can add others. Okay, I can add as many as I need. This is not a bad sentence, but remember, if it's getting out of control, if you're writing and your sentence is just too long, think about cutting it somewhere. Cut it in 2, cut it in 3, but make it very clear. But at least keep one of the independent clauses in there so that you still have a complex sentence, okay? Now we're going to look at the complex compound sentence. Now these can be very tricky because you obviously have many clauses. You have to identify each one. Let's look at an example. Okay, let's look at our last example. Now I know you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, that's too short. It can't be that complicated. It's not. All the elements that should be there are there. First, let's read it. Bill voted against the measure because he felt that it wasn't strong enough, but he also offered to continue discussions, which we will do next week. Now, what do I have here? I have compound, means I have to have 2 independent clauses, and I have complex, means I have to have at least 1 dependent clauses. So let's look at for the first independent clause. Again, look for a verb, a tense verb, voted. There's a subject, Bill. We have our subject verb. Against the measure, blah, blah, he felt. So here's a verb, here's another subject, but we know because, this is part of the dependent clause, it wasn't. Okay, there we have another verb, we have another subject, we have that, so that's another dependent clause. Oh, here's our conjunction. Okay, here's our subject, offered. He offered to continue discussions, which we will do. So there's another next subject verb. So let's break it down again. Bill voted against the measure, period. There's a complete idea. Bill also offered to continue discussions, period. There's another complete idea. So Bill voted against the measure, but he also offered to continue discussions. So there you have your compound. Now, we're giving you a reason. So we have here an adverb clause with reason about why he voted against. Because he felt. Felt what? That it wasn't strong enough. So here we have a noun clause acting as object to felt. He also offered to continue discussions, so the discussions, we will continue the discussions next week. So here we have an adjective clause. So look at that. I have all 3 types of dependent clause. I have 2 independent clauses with a contrasting compound conjunction, and I have a compound complex conjunction. So don't be afraid of complex sentence structures. Don't be afraid to have a variety of sentence structures in your writing. It will make your writing better. It will make it more interesting. And if you're doing a test, if you're doing the IELTS, TOEFL, SAT, GRE, GMAT, whatever, this will get you the points. Not doing this won't get you the points that you need. Okay? If you need to ask any questions, go to ingvid.com and ask me in the comment section there. There is a quiz there right now. Go do that. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.